back. For those of you who are just joining our networks now, welcome. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, it's very simple, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And for the broadcast schedule of the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. And for the X Zone TV channel on SimulTV, www.simultv.com. My guest this hour is Sasha Klanott, and she is a paranormal investigator and researcher with 20 years of experience specializing in extreme cases commonly known as a demonologist or spiritual warrior. She is a clairvoyant and medium, author of Liability of a Paranormal Team, which is part of the Paranormal Doors series. She is also the Louisiana State Representative for the North American Dogman Project. Sasha gives lectures at conventions, typically about keeping the integrity and evidence of the liability teams and what they hold, being a paranormal investigator with a mental illness and breaking the taboo that comes with it. Joining me now is Sasha Klanott. And Sasha, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you very much.
Great having you with us tonight. So tell us, what was it that happened in your life that put you on your course, the course of your life, where now you're a paranormal investigator, you're a you're a psychic, clairvoyant medium, and you're an author about books about the paranormal. What happened and when?
Well, it was about 12 that I started seeing entities, and that's kind of what triggered everything. I've had my gift since I was very young. I didn't realize that that's what it was. And actually didn't kind of, I guess, come to the realization that that's what it was until my mid-20s. Even though I knew what the gifts were, I didn't think I was special enough. But it was about 12 when I started seeing entities in my room and outside my window. And that kind of is what triggered the research and everything like that, which led to extreme cases, research, and so on.
Okay, so tell us about Haunted Bourbon, and why was it created?
Well, Haunted Bourbon, me living in New Orleans, that's stereotypically
Bourbon Street, sure.
Yeah, stereotypically known for a haunted city. And I found out that there was no paranormal convention here. There was hardly any paranormal events. Now, there's ghost tours left and right, but not actual ghost hunts. And so I noticed a need for it locally, as well as the paranormal field wasn't having as much fun at conventions as I was like. It wasn't a lot of camaraderie. It was more about competition. And there was a lot of lack of education at the conventions. And so I wanted to do what I could and to try and establish it, make a place to where, you didn't have to line up and kiss people's butts to become a speaker, that if you could show me that you had valid intellect on a specific topic and it was an educational topic, then I would do what I could to put you on the list of speakers.
Tell me, in your experience, based on everything that you do, why is there so much competition within the ghost hunting or the ghost paranormal genre?
Ego. I mean, that's the easiest word to put it. Everybody's so terrified because there's a team in town and they ghost hunt. It means that you'll never be successful because they're in town, and that if they investigate a similar location or the same location, then again, you're being run out of town, and that they are big bad people. And we have not matured as a field enough to get past that ego and our drive to become famous.
But when you look at places like the Waverly Sanatorium, investigators and researchers from all over the world go there, and yet there's plenty to do, plenty to see. So I don't understand that mentality. Yeah.
No, I don't. From a logical standpoint, I don't understand it either. I just, because I have my moments too, where I get a little possessive, but for the most part, it's all emotional, and it's all based around the ego about being afraid that somebody's going to overtake. I have seen people fight over Waverly. They're doing the same event at Waverly, and they're doing it at this price. They're trying to screw us over, and it's it's a continual thing. I mean, logically, I don't understand it, but it's there, and it's all centered around a need to be famous.
They're all hoping for that 15 minutes of fame on a TV show that doesn't pay them anything?
Exactly.
Okay. Makes perfect sense to me, doesn't it?
Right. So, and they sit there and scream at ghosts because they mess with your hair gel.
Yeah, what is that with people yelling at ghosts these days?
It's, well, basically, where my assumption, and this is my personal opinion, that derived, well, one, from a TV show, became popular from a TV show. Most of us know which one that came from. And it basically, the provocation originally came from being able to confront malevolent entities. And a TV show ended up using it, and now it's become this cool, popular thing to do that anybody with a brain cell would never do without using it in the right environment at the right time. But it's become a popular thing. Luckily, at least, from the people that I surround myself out with, they don't use it very often. But I know many people who still go in there and try to piss off a ghost like it's actually going to do any good.
That just baffles my imagination, because if they're disrespectful to the dead, they're going to be disrespectful to the living.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And there is a very extreme correlation between that. Me personally, I don't hunt in graveyards. I know tons of people that do. I don't hate them for it, but to me, I find it disrespectful. And you're absolutely right. If you were just going to automatically go in and not talk to somebody that you can't even see, what are you going to do to somebody that you can see, that you can get that reaction out of?
I've watched examples of these yahoos yelling at spirits, and to me, I find it like, that takes any credibility away that they may have had to start with.
Absolutely. And like I said, it was originally meant to be able to stand up to malevolent entities when it's needed, whether you're religious or not, the exorcisms, that's what they do. Now, they do that on a completely different level. It's just manipulated and twisted and everything into what we see now on TV and in paranormal groups. And just as you said, the way that they do it now is absolutely disrespectful, and there is no reason for it. Some consider it dangerous, and some, just as you said, completely devalues us as a field.
Yeah. In your opinion, where's the most haunted place in New Orleans?
Oh, goodness. I think all you have to do is step outside.
Okay.
I would probably say Jackson Square. That would be my personal opinion. I'm sure others would disagree. There's a lot of popular places here, but that would probably be my go-to place, because that is where the hanging, the public executions used to take place. And that is also where a lot of fighting was when the War of 1812 was. And then also you've got the church there. And so there's a whole mix of emotions there from a whole different aspect.
What's your most... let me rephrase this. What's your most favorite paranormal topic, and why?
Actually, it would be liability, and quantum theory. But I'm still baby new to quantum theory. But my main one that I really like is liability.
Now, I'd like to start talking about that, but I looked at my clock, and we're just under a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold on to this topic until we come back from this break at the bottom of this segment. And Exonation, our guest this hour is Sasha Klanott, and her website is www.hauntedbourbon.com. And Sasha and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, if you'd like to get your complimentary copy of the X Chronicles newspaper, all you need to do is go to www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. Now, you can read it online, you can download it, it's totally searchable. Have a blast. 92 full-color pages. Or if you'd like to have that print copy in your hand and you don't want to go through the hassle of downloading PDFs and printing them, you can go to Amazon.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and Sasha and I will return on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away. Welcome back, one and all. Sasha Klanott is our special guest this hour, www.hauntedbourbon.com. All right, before we went to the break, I asked you what your favorite topic was, and you said liability. Tell me about that.
Well, for whatever reason, growing up, I've always loved law. I mean, I didn't go to law school, but it's always been fascination, whether it's from a police aspect, a lawyer aspect. I swore when I grew up I was going to be a lawyer. And as I got to know, or more involved in the paranormal field, I've noticed that there was a lot of liability issues that were lacking. People weren't being careful. People didn't have contracts. They were getting screwed over left and right. There wasn't a definition of who owned what evidence. And it just was a big mess. And so I used that to help educate people, and it just ended up becoming a topic that I was extremely passionate about.
What legal liabilities would a paranormal investigator have, and why would they need to have contracts?
It actually, there's a whole slew of them. There's a general contract for team members, because you have to establish early on what the requirements are, what you expect of your team member, what your team member can expect of you, such as, I'm going to expect you to participate in so many investigations a month or a year or whatever. If you join the team, this is who owns the evidence and under what circumstances. On my team, it's if you bring in your equipment, your own personal equipment, where we have shared evidence. But if you use just equipment team, then it's ours and you don't get to use it. There's also, liability, safety liability, such as, who gets sued if somebody gets hurt. And that's just a team contract, and that's just everything I can come up off the top of my head. When you have, when you own an event like mine, each person joining the event, especially at ghost hunts, such as places like Waverly or Old South Pittsburgh, etc., you have to have a waiver signed because people can get hurt. And then you've also got your talent speakers. If you host a convention like mine, you've got to make sure that the talent knows what to expect, if they're getting paid, how much, who owns money and when, etc. The list can go on. Just to join my team, without the waiver, it's 4 pages. Which to most people would be a lot, but I keep coming up with things that need to be covered in that contract.
It sounds like this paranormal hobby is turning into a paranormal business.
It is. And what a lot of people don't realize is that even hobbies, like when you join a sports team, just a casual sports team, there are certain requirements. You still have certain expectations, and people can still get sued, especially with sports. So it's just recently in the last few years that a lot more people are starting to realize that we have to follow the same laws that any other basic organization is. And a lot of people just overlook that. Granted, I'm a little bit more thorough than the average person. If you were to join a sports team, you're going to sign, maybe like a code of conduct, maybe a short piece of paper about what's expected, and then a waiver saying that you're not going to sue them if you break a leg. But, my contracts go into a lot more detail. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize that your team, depending on what way you run it, might actually be a business. And that's why I separate my team from my convention, because my
Right.
convention is run to raise money for people, but it's still technically a business until I get an official 501(c). And my team is run as an unincorporated organization, which still has certain tax documents that is required. A lot of people just
Well,
don't
well, wait a
know.
sec. Hold on here. Hold on here. The tax documents are required if you charge for your services.
It's if you make money, yes, but
Yeah.
they still have to. You still have to register with them. I mean, even if you don't make money, obviously, if you don't make money, you don't pay
Right.
taxes.
Sure. If you're in a corporation or an LLC, but we're talking about ghost hunting. We're not talking about a multi-billion-dollar entity.
Right, but you still have certain obligations. Like I crochet on the side. I don't make very much money from it,
Mm-hmm.
but I still make money. And if you make any money at all, you still pay taxes. But even if I didn't make money,
Yeah.
I still have to report that I didn't make money. I still have to, if I did it for charity,
Yeah.
let's just say I did it out of my home, I would still have to record that if I'm representing myself as even an organization that crochets.
All
You
right.
still
But
have requirements.
but paranormal organizations, these people don't get paid, number one. Number two, the majority of them end up buying the equipment themselves.
Agreed. I do.
So why the I can understand it if you're doing it for insurance purposes, liability insurance, for other reasons, but my personal belief is that this is going a little bit too far. Does that deter anybody from getting involved?
No, and it's depending on who you ask, that would say that's a good thing or a bad thing. It doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
because I know tons of people who don't have the proper paperwork in general, just because they don't know what they should think of. But it is very important to make sure that you have the right paperwork. Even unincorporated organizations, which is a normal ghost hunting team. Most ghost hunting teams are unincorporated,
Yeah.
and they're just an organization.
Right.
They still have requirements that they're supposed to follow. And it's just, now, am I saying if the IRS came to you and say, okay, well, you didn't make any money and you didn't file with us, but we're still going to put you in jail? No, it's very unlikely. But it's still always better to make sure that you have the proper paperwork. That way you can sit here and tell somebody, we're a ghost hunting team.
Uh-huh.
We're separate. And then also there is that legal liability between, if let's say you and I were on a team,
Mm-hmm.
and I go on a killing rampage and somebody sues the team, can they sue the team? Can they only sue an individual? And that's why you've got to register even as an organization or a LLC or, whatever you decide to put your team as, so that those boundaries can be established in case something like that happens.
Let me ask you this.
So,
You and your team go into a residence. Are you insured?
we don't go into residence, not right now.
All right. So let's say you go
specifically-
into a business. Your ghost tour goes into a business, or something happens on a public street. Are you
Right.
insured?
Well, I don't do ghost tours. I'm
So
saying
what?
that they had
All right.
ghost tours
Let me look at it this way. When you have your event,
Right.
are you insured?
I do. I go through locations that have insurance that I can use.
But why don't you
But
get your
you
own
should always
insurance?
Because there's no way that with the money that I get at the end of it, that I
Mhm.
would be able to afford that. So I have to be careful about what locations I use. And that way, if something were to happen, that location's insurance does cover it on top of the waivers that I do have. But you should always have insurance, whether it's personal insurance, whether you do go in residence, especially if you go into a residence, and especially if you do ghost tours.
Are your people put through police background checks?
It's just me and my fiance, but yes, anybody that joins my team needs to be going through. But that's a personal choice. That I just prefer to make sure that everybody on my team I don't have to worry about. Now, granted, if they haven't been arrested or caught yet, but that also shows that I took the initial effort to make sure that everybody on my team, and that relieves me of some liability, that I took an honest effort to make sure that everybody on my team, whether it's just me and my
Right.
fiance or whether it's 10 people.
All right, let me
So
ask you
that
this,
helps.
and I hope you don't take it the wrong way. Why are you such a
No, it's fine.
stickler?
I just think it's my personality. I feel that if you don't take those precautions,
Mm-hmm.
that you run the risk. I have heard horror stories of people having people on their team and they run off with money, and come to find out, if they would have done a background check, they would have seen that that person had theft on their record, and they wouldn't have let them near money. I have dated violent people in the past, and it's never affected, the residential team.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't do the proper background checks, and if I would have, then I probably wouldn't have been dating them in the first place. But it's vital to me. My opinion is it's very vital to take those extra efforts to make sure that not only are your team, but your residents are going to be taken care of if you are going to have random people.
All right, so what is it exactly you do then? If you don't go into houses, if you don't do tours, what exactly do you do?
Normally I do residentials. I'm just not doing residentials
Oh, I
now
see.
until I get the proper insurance. I do handle the extreme cases, which means that I am even more at liability than the average person, because then you cross that threshold
Mm-hmm.
of telling somebody that, oh, no, you're just crazy, or no, you're possessed, and they come to find out they've got schizophrenia. So there's certain more obligations there, and that's another reason that I'm waiting to get back into residentials. Like when I was in Alaska, I wasn't a stickler for insurance. I should
Mm-hmm.
have been, but I wasn't. And I did do residentials quite frequently, almost every weekend, because it was just starting to become popular up there. And so I don't judge people if they don't have it. I don't necessarily agree that they don't have it, but to me, it's vital to go through those extra efforts.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Our guest this hour is Sasha Klanott, and her website is hauntedbourbon.com. And we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue talking about the paranormal, parapsychology, and what makes this business tick. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, as well as Simul Radio and Simul TV. Our guest this hour is Sasha Klanott. Her website is hauntedbourbon.com. Tell me about your experience as a demonologist or spiritual warrior.
Well, I mean, it's stereotypical. I mean, we've had people come in. I've had to sort out between claims of, being possessed
Mm-hmm.
and, having an entity in there, and having to sort out which ones are true, which ones are not.
Right.
I mean, I haven't had anybody crawl on the ceiling, but I've had washing machines move out from the wall. I have had things move, which obviously does not declare it necessarily a demon or inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had cases where I've heard growls out loud. People come out on my team with bruises and such. So, I mean, I can't really say that I'm any more different than any other extreme case demonologist, whatever you want to call it.
Where did you get your training to become a demonologist?
There is no formal training. I wish there was, but it's such a gray area. But I started studying it when I was very young, and I just kind of, through experiences, people started helping me out. More
Mm-hmm.
experienced and more, I guess, seasoned investigators would help guide me and stuff like that. And then I started noticing that, I don't want to say a big majority of my cases, because later on, it became smaller, fewer percentages, but it became a big enough percentage to where I wanted to start focusing on it. And I started noticing that I had an ability to do the research that I felt was required to perform the abilities. I don't pull out holy water or anything like that. So I don't think a 1999 certificate certifies you as a demonologist either.
I agree. I agree. So when you go to a residence or a location where there's an alleged demonic
Right.
situation, how do you quantify if it's demonic or if it's in fact something other than that?
Well, the first thing I do is I try to see with the mental stability of the client. If I have any
Hmm.
concerns, I say, I'm going to need you to get an evaluation
Well, wait a sec,
because
wait a sec, wait a sec. You're not
Mhm.
a doctor. You're not a trained professional health
that's
person.
that's what I was saying was that because I can't, because I say I have these concerns because they
Uh-huh.
might be jittery. That's why I say you need to go get an examination. That's
Why wouldn't
exactly
you
it.
just say, "I'm sorry, we're not going to do anything"? Because when
What do
you
you mean?
say go get an examination, you're already making an assumption, and the person can interpret it as you saying that they may have issues.
Well, I put it a little bit more delicately than that, but I have them go through a whole battery. It's not like I just sit there and go in like a
Hmm.
lot of people and say, "Oh, you're demon possessed or you're not."
Okay.
I sit there. They have to go get a medical evaluation, which really upsets me. It's very unpopular, at least here, um, to have them go through a battery of tests. But I have them go to the doctor. If the doctor says, okay, well, these medicines are not counteracting, they're not creating hallucinations, they need to go
Hmm.
get a psychological evaluation, especially if I pick up that there might be something there. Now, if
Right.
they sit there, a lot of the red flags I look at in the first initial interview is if
Hmm.
they might be doing some attention seeking behavior, because if that's a very huge possibility, I kind of distance myself a little bit until I start seeing things. It doesn't mean I completely shut them out, but
Gotcha.
I'm not going to necessarily waste my time or the team's time with somebody that might just be attention seeking. If for some reason the psychiatrist and the doctor both say that they are valid, or not valid, but that, one says that they're sane, the other two says that yes, they don't have any medical issues, be it heart conditions or medication,
Hmm.
then I will sit there and I will go through an investigation, see if I catch anything. And I do that more than once. I don't approve of these people going in and saying a place is haunted or not haunted
Right.
within one time, unless stuff starts flying off the shelves and, you're right there and you can tell that nobody's throwing anything. Then that's a good assumption. Um, so I'll go in there multiple times, and I also interview the client multiple times to see if there's any story changes, to see if there's any kind of clues. I also look to see if there's a possible cause. If there doesn't seem to be a cause, it could just be a really ticked off entity that is moving stuff around, and it because they are unaware of what the symptoms are, they assume that it's demonic and it's just a ghost moving stuff or making noises. So if there seems to be a cause, then I'll keep pursuing. I check the background of the house to see if there might be anything attached, any kind of deaths or murders or anything there.
Right.
The best I can. Obviously, once you get to a certain year of a house,
Hmm.
there isn't a whole lot. Oftentimes, the police aren't very much help, and trying to explain to them that you're trying to get a case file is not easy. I also sit there and try to make sure that there's not bad wiring. Now that gets into a gray area because again, I'm not an electrician. So I
Right.
try to use the best of my ability to do that. I encourage them to get somebody in here, especially if the K2 meter goes off, because again, I don't think it's a magic tool. I don't think it's a cure all. But, if the K2 is going off in the middle of the wall for no reason, then there might be a reason for bad wiring that might cause hallucinations and stuff like that.
Why wouldn't you call in the city engineer and have the city engineer go over the property? There's no charge for that.
I was unaware of that because in Alaska, I have tried to check with the city to see if that's something that they do, and
Hmm.
they say no. I have not checked down here in New Orleans, but in Alaska, that is what they have told me because I don't feel that a client should have to pay for an electrician or a plumber to come out.
I don't
To do
think
that.
a client should pay for anything when it comes to a paranormal investigation.
Agreed.
Yeah, because nobody knows what the actual cause is, and without validation
Absolutely.
from an engineer, a city engineer, or even an electrician, somebody with heating and air conditioning experience, you're basically shooting at the dark. But tell me, what are
Correct.
some of the demons that you've dealt with?
Like, what do you mean? Like by name?
Well, no,
Or do you mean just, well, that's where I kind of fall into the unpopular category. I don't know. That's why I use extreme case specialists. I am a pagan. I don't necessarily believe that there's this big, huge entity that goes out and tries possessing people. I try to go in there and see if there's any kind of inhuman entity. And if it's a case that, does look like it's a demon, I might move it on to a Christian person, especially if the client is Christian. Now, I have had EVPs that come back, Azazel, which is a demon. Now, that's only happened a couple times. Like I said,
yeah.
I cannot verify that is Azazel. I have my hesitation to say that, there is angels and demons and that this demon wants to take your soul and eat it or whatever. I lean a lot more towards there being an inhuman entity from somewhere else that is trying to just, whether it's harass us or whatnot. I personally do not believe that entities are really trying to possess us.
Then what do these demons want, or these negative entities want?
That is kind of unknown because, unfortunately, there, just like you said, there isn't a formal cause to any kind of these anomalies.
Right.
2, we don't have a stream of EVPs unless you're real lucky or you've got, some kind of audio device that sits there and creates words for you. But most investigators, even in demonic cases, don't sit there and have, I want your soul. So it's very hard to sit there and say that. I've never had any entity, whether it's a ghost or a possible demon, which is why I don't like, when I say demonologist, I use it as an umbrella term, but that's why I prefer extreme case specialist. I don't believe that there's entities out there to get our souls. My opinion would be that they are just trying to upset us. And not like a personal vendetta, but, as easy as trying to get our attention, trying to communicate with us, and our audio devices don't pick up. There's too many unknowns, and that's why I don't feel comfortable saying this is their cause, because even if there was an entity out there trying to possess us, there would be different reasons for each person, just like a serial killer per se has different reasons that they go out and kill people numerously. So I feel that they would have their own reason for it depending on each entity.
All right, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. And next on Nation, our guest this hour is Sasha Klanott, and her website is, got your pencils ready? All right, here we go, hauntedbourbon.com. That's www.hauntedbourbon.com. And we're going to be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, the X-Chronicles newspaper is available for one and all with our compliments at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. And in this issue alone, it's been downloaded or read in over 9,300 cities around the world. We'll be back. Don't go away. right, Exonation, Sasha Klanott is our guest. Her website is hauntedbourbon.com. How many members are there in your team, Sasha?
Right now, only two. Just
You and
me.
your fiance.
Right.
And
I have had a couple that joined, but they don't have the time to continue.
I see. Um, what has been your most memorable paranormal experience?
Probably the case where the washing machine did come out from the wall. As soon as I heard it, I ran
Hmm.
upstairs. I checked around to see if there was any causes for it. We called the owners to see if we
Right.
could open up the bottom of it, to open up the bottom of the washing machine, and see if there was any kind of gadget inside that would cause it to move.
Hmm.
And at that same investigation, we caught a bunch of growls, and one of the team members ended up with a bruise at the end of it. So that was probably my most memorable one. I've had other good ones that are less eventful, and I've had other stuff in the field that is eventful, but that would probably be the most, I guess, quote unquote, dramatic case I've
Sure.
had.
Um, let's say somebody calls you up and you go to their house and you do the investigation after you've done all the preliminary work that is done.
Uh-huh.
How do you present the person who has called you with whatever you find?
If we find anything,
Hmm.
because I have had many cases where I don't find anything. The first thing I do is, if I do find something, I go through a little spiel that says, there isn't a way to prove or disprove the paranormal.
Right.
This is the typical guidelines at what
Hmm.
point we would normally say that this is or is not haunted. Um, I let them know that anything that they hear, is unlikely to hurt you, because 99.9% of the time, like I said, I think I've only had one case where somebody got hurt, and that was just the team member at that time that ended up with a bruise. I've never had a client with scratches or anything like that. So I present them, that they aren't if they were to hear anything, that it's not of any huge consequence. So then I will show them each step that we used, explain why we feel that it may or may not be paranormal. And I make sure that I weed out anything that may be questionable, such as, a very quiet mumble or something like that. I wouldn't toss into the pile. I mean, I might keep it in their file for later in case, it goes on for a year, they want me back. But realistically, that wouldn't be something I show to a client. So it would have to be
Hmm.
very clear EVP, and I would have to explain to them why I would think it was. If it's something semi scary, because we've had some stuff that could be construed for somebody that doesn't know better, that's scary. If there's photos, give the options why we would think that it would be paranormal or not. And basically just do the same thing for any video we may or may not catch. And then at the end of it, say what we would suggest if there was any follow-ups. We would pursue more investigations, or we don't think anything here is going to hurt you. So at this point, it would be up to you if you want us to come in some more, but we can cleanse the house. But realistically, nothing in here is going to hurt you, or we didn't find anything. And I'm really sorry, but we don't find anything that would be any remotely, what we would consider remotely towards the paranormal.
Why would a person who's having suspected paranormal activity call a paranormal investigator instead of a member of the clergy?
Um, there's a ton of reasons for that. Some of it is they may not go to church. Like,
Hmm.
I don't go to church. Some of it is they don't want to be judged by their clergy, because a lot of times clergy, not all, but some, can be very condescending or judgmental, or they just shrug it off. Um, Again, that's not all the case. There's
Right.
plenty of good. I have worked with them. Um, and some of it is they don't think that it's something that clergy can help out with. Usually, if a client does tell me that they are religious oriented, I do ask them if they would want us to involve their clergy, whether it's, priest.
Hmm.
Um, but it is, there's so many reasons, but those would probably be the main three that I would give off.
Why does a spirit stay behind instead of crossing and going to the light?
My opinion would be that I don't feel that they necessarily stay behind for whatever reasons. The very little that I have learned with quantum theory is that there
Hmm.
is a possibility that there is other dimensions, and that at some points it weakens, and that's why we are able to. If you were to follow through or follow the theory that they are left behind, it would be because they died of a traumatic cause, whether it was a sudden murder or a sudden heart
Right.
attack, or they have a longing to watch over that person. And sometimes a lot of people think that they have left behind, and they haven't. Like, because I am a medium, I have talked to people who don't stay behind, but they can still talk. I don't feel that even if there was, a light or, whatever,
Hmm.
that they wouldn't be able to communicate. And that is part of the reason that I think that there might be something different going on rather than just being left behind because of unresolved issues. Because I have communicated with people that have moved on, and they only pop around every so often. And it would go against that belief that once they move on, they can't really talk to us.
How different?
So,
I'm sorry. How different is the the awareness of the paranormal in Alaska compared to New Orleans?
as far as the awareness, it
Hmm.
depends what way you look at it. Like in the native culture, obviously there's a lot of
Yes.
supernatural
Yeah.
stories of creatures. So from that aspect, it's not completely out of the realm of scope. But unfortunately, you still got a lot of religious aspect in there, and it's actually not too different. The only difference is that New Orleans has more people, which
Hmm.
means that there's a higher percentage that you'll be accepted more. But it's still, as when you come to the city, it's really hard to hold an event, try to say, hey, we'd like to donate to your charity. Like I said, my event donates to charity. So trying to approach people going, hey, we don't sacrifice children and we don't worship Satan, and we would really like to work with you. We're normal people that, are involved in an extraordinary field, and we would just like to try and help you out. So trying to approach people is pretty much the same here. There's a lot of judgment and whatnot, but as far as a fan base or people that would want to attend events, there's a lot more of them here than up there. Um, there's also a lot more education in the supernatural up in Alaska versus here. There's a
Really?
lot of people who,
Wow.
well, because up there in their culture, it's a lot more accepted. Once you bring, like, because people assume because of voodoo that, it would be widely accepted. Well, no, down here, I mean, there's still a lot of people involved in voodoo and stuff like that. But when it comes to like city officials or general outlook, it's very conservative down here. As soon as you bring something that's not Christian up, they automatically have this negative stigma behind
Right.
it.
So,
So it's hard to deal with sometimes.
so the fact that you're a pagan, does that work against you?
Down here, yes, it does. It's something that I don't necessarily mention right off the bat.
Hmm.
I don't hide it. I'm not ashamed of it, but it's not
Right.
something I mention because I want people to see me in a different light and get to know me for a person rather than that I'm a witch. But yeah, anytime that I do bring that up, it does become an issue about half the time. In Alaska, they're actually more accepting of that, which is really odd. They can accept that I'm pagan, but the supernatural they get judgmental about. But down here, it's just no to anything that's not Christian. So I have to make sure that I find the appropriate time to bring it up if it even comes up,
Right.
and try to go from there. But yeah, there is a lot of judgment. I do have a pentacle tattoo on my forearm, so if I go to a business meeting, I wear a long sleeve shirt, but I do have comments made, good and bad, about my tattoo. When I would ride a bus or if we're at a restaurant or something like that, people will make comments.
Wow. It's not very nice, is it?
Yeah, but I understand a lot of it is a lack of education. Once I explain that, again, I don't worship the devil or I
Hmm.
sacrifice babies, they tend to open up, and once they start asking questions, I notice that, they realize that I'm not a bad person, and that you just see things a little differently.
Well, let's face it, the witches and Wicca have received a bum rap throughout history.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another one that, explaining the difference between
Mhm.
Wiccan and witchcraft and Druid and stuff like that. But I've been associated with Druids who in the past have been associated with human sacrifice, and I've had to go, no, no. But yeah, there's a lot of stigma, and breaking that is a big thing that I like to work on with the event as well.
Well, I wish you continued success. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for today, but we'd
Oh,
love to
that's
have you back on because it was certainly entertaining, it was enlightening, and it was educational.
Thank you.
And once again, if you'd like to get more information about our guest this hour, XO Nation, Sarah Klanott, her website is hauntedbourbon.com. Now, I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.